Hello and welcome to the 2023 International Pro Team Challenge. My name is Alan Culpepper and I'm joined by Mr. Frank Shorter, 1972 Olympic gold medalist. And Frank, from 1979, when you were a part of the co-founding group, all the way till now, there's been some iteration of a professional race and supporting professional athletes, and this year's no different. So I'm excited to be bringing all the action to you folks here in the stadium and online watching with us. We're just about a minute away from the start of the women's race, which will be going off here just outside of the stadium. And we'll give you the rundown of all the teams and individuals to watch for. But Frank, what are your initial thoughts?
That, as we said before, it really is a good day. It was actually a little better at the start of the citizens race, but it hasn't gotten too hot. The wind, and actually you want a little wind now, so there's a little bit of wind. And again, the teams here, you never know. But the other point about the team race is it was an idea that the Boulder came up with, I think it was 1998, and it seemed to work. Now, some places it doesn't work, but here it seemed to, because the thought was to draw in athletes from, there they go, athletes from other countries who wouldn't get the opportunity to even come to the United States. So it was to make it more of an international field, to not have it dominated by athletes from just 1 or 2 or 3 countries.
Absolutely, and this year we have 5 teams competing from around the world. We'll give you the rundown here. We have Kenya, we have 2 United States teams. One is based in Colorado, and the other is from around the country. We have a team from Mexico and a team from Colombia. So a wide variety. Many of these athletes train and live at elevation, so they're used to racing at this type, well, maybe not racing, but definitely training at this type of elevation, and several University of Colorado graduates. So we have folks from all across the globe, and we'll give you the rundown as we get a little further into the race and how it shakes out. But just to keep in mind that these athletes are running for individual prize money based on their finish. Top 15 will all win prize money. And they're also going for team prize money. So the top 3 teams will also make prize money. So this is a unique format, as you mentioned, Frank, from 1998, where there's the individual component, but also the team concept, which a lot of you that ran high school cross country, it's no different. It's team scoring, where each person, based on their finish, that's their score. So they're trying to get the lowest score possible.
And you want to run for your teammates as well. And I think that really pushes you on. It really does. It motivates you to try not only for yourself, but to not let the other athletes on your team, to not let them down.
It does. It makes a big difference when maybe you're not having your best day and you're back a bit further in the pack, to know that you're still running to support that team, and that every team member, so all 3 of them, all 3 person, their points count towards their team total. So it does make a difference, and it's as you're coming down that last stretch down Folsom, to know that, hey, I need to contribute to my team is an important element. But right away, you're going to see that these athletes work together, and I think we'll see that from the team standpoint.
And I think the lady in the white singlet is Edna Kurgat, if I'm not mistaken, and she is on Team USA. She was in the Army, and is actually in the Army now, and she's from Eldoret, Kenya, but several Kenyans have come over and really joined our military to serve us, and then run for America and become, most of them, American citizens. And I really think that is wonderful, that it's a total commitment, and it's not just to come over here to try to earn as much money as you can.
Yeah, so as they say, they're soldiers first, so they've gone through all the basic training and all of the necessary aspects that they're required to do, but then their part of their service is that they race and train for the Army. So you can see on Edna's singlet there, it says Army, so they're based in Colorado Springs. We have a few gentlemen that are doing the same in the men's race. But right away, it looks like we have 4 individuals that have already broken away. It's a long way to go. So we don't like to call it too early on how these things are going to shake out, because there's people that might start a little bit more conservative and just as the race unfolds work their way up. But you never know. There's sometimes someone just goes right from the get-go and they're just having a special day.
Well, they're still winding their way around on the flats, and this is important. And I think it's significant that they gained a lead so easily on the rest of the pack, not running that hard. They're not running that hard. And again, they work together, but now the Kenyans have dropped back.
And there on the large video board, you can see the time, 3:55, 3:56. So that's that's within a second or so of the official time. But that'll give us a good sense of their splits as they go through the mile markers, and we'll give you all here watching in the stands a sense of what that will lead to in terms of their finishing time.
And the other thing to remember is you have your best range. Any runner has his or her best range. Some do better in the heat than others relatively, and others like the cold. And so conditions today, I think you could say, really are on more the hot side. And so those kind of athletes will have a certain benefit today.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. In the low 70s, for Boulder this time of year is really beautiful, but when you're running at this level, that is a little on the warm side. I know when the fastest times, when I look over the fastest all-time men's and women's, they came on years when we had one of those 50 degree and rainy overcast mornings, and it just really set the tone for a fast race.
There's something about right after it rains and it's wet, there seems to be more oxygen in the air, and they're actually studying that, and they think it may be true.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, in 1995 is when the men's and the women's fastest time were ever set. The course was slightly different than this, but I'd say aside from the first 2K, the rest of it was the same. Just for those of you watching, they're running, aside from the first about mile and a half, they're running on a different course, but then they will join up with the course that you just ran. So that was by design with race director Cliff Bosley to give you all a sense of what it takes for these elite athletes to run through the course. These women will run in the 32:30 to 33 minute range. The men will run in the 28:30 to 29 minute range. So very fast running.
Wow, and here we go.
All right, so that is Edna Kurgat and Daisy Kameli, who are your two leaders. They went through 4:55 at the first mile. Naibe, who's also from Kenya, she's in third, and Emily Durgeon in fourth from the United States.
And no offense to the men who ran in the citizens race this morning, but that's the same pace the men were running this morning.
You are correct. We had a race this morning. We called it bright and early, where they had a little bit better conditions, but yes, our men's swimmer was 31:04, and they went through in 4:55 at the mile, same time.
And this is actually running together comfortably, trying to get a sense of the other runner's form. And you study while you're running. You study the athletes you're running with, because you look at them at the start, and then over time you kind of look at them, and very often you can sense that things are starting to change. And that's when many times you'll just take off and surge and try to get a lead.
So Edna, as we mentioned, she runs for the WCAP program based in Colorado Springs. She was on our World Cross Country Championship team that competed down in Australia earlier this year. I saw her at a track meet here just recently in California, where she ran 15:15 for a 5K on the track. And so we know she's fit. So, there's always that question mark of what's their fitness actually coming into the race versus what they've run previously in previous years. And we knew with Edna that she was really ready to go and would be a factor this morning.
Here we are, and this is the hill, I think, going up Folsom. And it's that first little test. You come up and you kind of veer over to the left a little bit and level off. And that's where you kind of get the first sense of where someone is really going to make a move. And as I was talking about before, this is where you look at form of your competitors. You really see how they're doing compared to how you feel.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, this is what we do, right?
Well, maybe what we used to do.
Yeah. As somebody said, not anymore.
Right. So it is subtle, though. There's those subtle little differences that you're looking for when you're racing your competitors at that level. So we're going to go to the men's start here in just a second, which is, again, starting on Folsom, just outside of the stadium. So we're going to go through the men's rundown and give you an idea of those teams competing once we get them out on the course. But we're excited that once again you all have stuck around with us. These athletes really do appreciate it. It makes a big difference when they come to that stadium to know that support for all that hard work they've been putting in. These athletes train year-round. This is their full-time job, and they're working hard, and so all that support is really appreciated.
And the Boulder at this time of year is at that point where you're starting to back off on your training and try to sharpen up and to really get ready for the running season. And so the Boulder is really a good indication to you of how your fitness is coming.
Well, Frank, as both of us as marathoners, I think we found that racing at altitude was actually an asset when you are training for the marathon. And a lot of these runners are marathon types that have already run marathons or are planning to run one. And we've seen that over the years, those are the types that do quite well.
Wow, she looks good.
It's a nice shot of the start line earlier this morning. The first year in 1979, Mr. Rick Rojas won the professional race, and he was our official starter this morning for the Citizens race and all those waves that went off. So, and reliving Rick's legacy, you know.
And his daughter Nell, who has done very well in the marathon, and I think recently, in Boston, she was the highest American finisher in Boston.
Yeah, Nell has been running amazing these last few years, so we'll be watching for her as she vies to make the Olympic team next year in the marathon.
And as compared to the morning in the waves, you don't have to worry about elbowing your way around here.
No, these elites are pampered a little bit. They get their special setup, their own fluids. They're really taken care of, and the Boulder does a great job. And as we shared, they've always supported elite athletes over the years, and it really is a testament to the legacy of this race. So that looks like Edna's just turning onto Hawthorne, which means she just passed the 2-mile mark. She has about a 10-second lead. We'll try and get her split there for 2 miles.
They're off.
And there's the start of the men's professional race. Let's give a quick rundown of your men's teams. We have Kenya, USA Colorado, USA, Mexico, Great Britain, and Tanzania. Tanzania is the returning champion from last year. So as you all know, we had to work through a global pandemic, and with that, events like the Boulder had to take a hiatus and do a virtual. A lot of you did the virtual version, which was wonderful in 2020, but last year, coming back to the in-person race, as part of the professional race, they did a modified team version. So there was only 2-person teams last year, now back to 3-person teams. So back to the traditional format since 1998, and where all individuals, all top 3 will score. So we'll give you some rundown of some of these individuals here. Right up front, you'll see with the blue singlet on, sponsored by Nike, that's Connor Mantz. Connor is one of America's really bright stars. Currently, he's multiple-time NCAA champion. I think he won back-to-back NCAA cross-country championships, which was really, really unheard of. And he's a 27-25 10K runner on the track. He just competed in the Boston Marathon for those of you that were watching Boston, and he was very aggressive. He is not afraid to run aggressive. I think that's the best way to describe Connor. And he will take the lead, and he'll grind it out the entire race. In his debut marathon, his very first marathon, he ran 2 hours and 8 minutes. So that shows that he has an amazing range, and we'll see how he bounces back. So that differential from April till now, it is a little tricky when you run a marathon in April and you're trying to recover properly and then actually prepare again. So you carry some residual fitness, but at the same time your body goes through a lot when you run a full all-out marathon. So we'll see how he does later in the race. He's definitely going to set the tone early, but we'll see how he feels later as the race goes on.
Well, from a training perspective, my experience was I could run marathons in a short period, within, say, 2 months, but it took a month to recover to the point where I felt like I was really training again. And so he's had 2 or 3 weeks of what we would call actual training, and we just have to see how he responds to that.
Absolutely.
But he's certainly setting the pace, and he's willing to. But here the pack is willing to let him go and they're not letting them get too far. And that's very often how it works here. And the advantage, those in the back of the pack, they can be drafting. They can be drafting on each other, and when you're running on someone's shoulder, you can actually save 5% energy, even if you're just on the shoulder just behind. And so that is one thing, and the people in the middle of the pack, as long as they're not impeded on their strides and getting tripped up. But at this level, these runners really know how to stay away from each other and just run their races.
And we'll see what their first mile split is here as we come around there. They just made that right-hand turn onto Pearl Street. So as we get through the mile, we'll get a better sense of the pace they're running, but looks like Connor has settled back down a little bit, and there is a lead pack, unlike the women's race, which is broken up. Kurgat has a 10-second lead. She went through 2 miles in 10 minutes and 12 seconds. And it looks like the Women's USA team was leading at that point with first, second, and fourth, with Kurgat, Emily Durjan, and Carrie Verdon. So some of the other athletes in the men's race to look for, Wesley Kiptoo. Actually, Wesley and Connor were, I wouldn't call them arch rivals, but they were definitely rivals in college. Wesley went to Iowa State. They had a lot of very, very strong battles while in college. Wesley now running professional for Hoka NAZ Elite, based in Flagstaff, Arizona. Also on the Kenyan team is Alex Masai. I see them in the bouncy form. Beautiful stride there with the arm sleeve on and the multicolored singlet. Alex and Wesley are training partners. Edward Cheserek is also on Team Kenya. Edward was, gosh, he's probably the most decorated NCAA distance runner of all time. He had 17 national titles while at the University of Oregon and has gone on to run. He's shown an amazing range. So we'll see how he comes through today. He's run 3:50 in the mile. And he mentioned to me he might be doing a marathon soon. So he has an amazing range. He's in fourth right there, I can see. On Connor Mance's team, along with Connor, is Clayton Young and Jared Ward, all three BYU graduates, all three training
it could
in
be
Utah.
It could be Team Utah.
It could, absolutely.
They're all from Utah. Again, they have their altitude training, just like here.
Yeah, I would say as I look over this, it's hard to find a team on here that hasn't been training or living at altitude. I know that Great Britain might be a bit of a disadvantage in that regard. Liam D, who's based in New York City, and Chris Thompson, who flew here from London. Chris is a two-time Olympian. Aside from Liam and Chris, I would say almost every other athlete lives and trains at altitude, and I know Chris does spend time in Flagstaff.
And again, he has credentials right up there with the Kenyans. He's run, 27-27 for 10,000 and 13-11 for 5,000, and that's right up there with everybody who's in this field.
Yeah, I think the trick with some of these athletes that are coming in for this race is how they handle the travel more than anything, because some are literally traveling from Africa. A Tanzanian team flew here from Tanzania. We have the British athletes, a few of them that came from Great Britain. So Colombia on the women's side. So that's always the trick is, you're just changing time zones and you get out of whack. These athletes really, they thrive off of their routine and how they feel. And so those little nuances can make a difference when you're really running as hard as you possibly can towards the end of the race.
And the other thing about running at altitude, and for me, it was kind of anecdotal at the start, you shouldn't arrive right in the middle of the week, maybe 4 or 5 days before your race. If you're going to arrive late, even arrive on Friday, the day before, because your body starts to adjust to being at altitude, and it really is under stress to do that. But you can avoid that stress if you can race right away coming up here, or you come up perhaps a week or 2 weeks before, so your body can adjust and you can do some training up here. So there's a sort of on either end of this continuum. It's either really come up right before or come up maybe a week, 10 days before.
That's that first little hill we talked about on Folsom, and Connor putting his head down and making a little tiny surge. He's going to be that type of runner where he'll push a little bit and see who responds, and push a little bit and see if anyone wants to go with him. But there's definitely a pack of about 8 that I'm counting in there. Looks like Tanzania, all 3 Tanzanian. I see Sam Chilenga, who's on the US WCAP team, training in Colorado Springs. I see him in the mix, one of our Mexican athletes. it is a little tricky from our vantage point to pick out exactly some of the numbers in there, but we'll do our best as they string out a little bit.
They're just letting him lead. And he is comfortable up there. And for a lot of runners, it's better to be up there than in that pack because some people don't feel comfortable there. You feel a lot looser just being out front. But it does take its toll because if they let him lead the whole way and he doesn't get much of a gap towards the end of the race, he could get in trouble.
And the men went through the mile in 4:41, so that's around 29:05 pace. So very solid, right in kind of the normal standards of what we would see year over year. Back to our women's race. Now that's Emily Durgeon in second from the United States, also on that world cross country team back in the winter down in Australia. So she's seemed to have closed the gap just a little bit. And
she is.
Has made the break from the rest of the pack. So that's USA in first and second, which is very, very good for their team score, obviously. The women are coming up on 20 minutes, so they should be about to turn on to 13th, I would imagine, here soon. We are getting word that Kurgad and Emily Durgeon are 13 seconds ahead of third place, who is Daisy Camelli. Another 24 seconds back to Emily Verdon. Carrie Verdon. So, gosh, that's a great showing so far for Team USA. Now, keep in mind that Carrie's on Team Colorado for the USA team.
Seems the men slowed down a little bit in that second mile. 9:30 for 2 miles. That's about 4:45 per mile pace. So they've slowed down just a little bit.
Yep, looks like they maybe were closer to 4:50 for the second mile. Definitely a bigger pack on the men's side. The women's is really strung out. Whereas we're showing a 2-minute gap back to 5th place on the women's side. So it's really going to come down to those top two, I'm imagining, with that big of a gap already at 20 minutes into the race. There's Leonard Carreras. First I've seen him to the left of your screen in the Army singlet. Leonard was our champion last year, so he for sure understands this course. He's been here several times. So he's a gamer, he's a competitor, so I would not count out Leonard. He really knows how to race this course.
And it really is an advantage to do that. And when they get to the 4.5 mile point, just as with women and men this morning, that really, I think, is where you really start looking to see what's going on. And that's a hill. And it really, on this kind of course at altitude, it's a way how you handle the hills and then recover.
There we go. So Emily Durgeon has closed that gap and is now, looks like she's just ever so slightly pulling ahead. That's coming down the hill at Casey Middle School. So they've already crested the highest point on the course.
Right at that point.
So we'll see how Edna, how she responds. That's Frank, that's always the issue, is like, okay, is she gonna gather herself and go with her, or is Emily just gonna continue to pull away? That'll be the question.
Well, my thought here is, yes, they're on the same team, but have they ever trained together?
No, they do not train together.
Right, and so this is new for them.
Yeah, and that's the interesting component. I mean, the gloves definitely come off, so they're definitely competing for Team USA today, but at the end of the day, they want to win, and there's a significant prize purse difference between first and second, I'll tell you that.
Yep. And here we have an example again of running the tangents. Edna Kurgad is running the tangent, the least amount of distance when you come to a curve in a corner.
It doesn't, and a course like this, so over 10K, and with this many turns, it makes a big difference. For those of you that wear a GPS watch that ran the race, you'll say, gosh, the course might be long, and it's just because you weren't running the tangents, and it'll add up over the course of a 10K.
Good point.
We definitely have some separation now.
Here we go.
Just past the 7K mark, 3K to go. Emily is, she's definitely pulling away.
And Edna is really tightening up. She, her stride isn't as long. Look at her arms. They're raised a little bit more.
Emily's averaging 5:21 per mile, which will put her around that 33-minute range.
And you have to remember at altitude for the women, I would subtract a minute and a half to see what they would run at sea level.
Yes, exactly.
It is not, just, you don't have as much oxygen. And it's not because there isn't enough oxygen in the air, it's the partial pressure from the atmosphere. You can't breathe as much.
The men are averaging about 4:44 per mile. Still a lead pack from what we can tell.
I have a sense this is going to be a breakaway sometime, maybe a little bit past halfway, maybe a little farther because it's at altitude, but I think they're running much more slowly than they're able to. And this race is over.
It is very, very almost impossible to come back from that type of when you've been passed and someone's pulling away at that point in the race. It's going to be really now for Edna to hold on for second place is what she's going to be thinking about. And I would be shocked if anyone were going to come close that gap to Emily at this point.
But she looks good. She has her own particular form. She moves a little bit more in her upper body than most people do. But what you always look for me is from the waist down, how the legs are moving. And you see there she's very smooth and she's very efficient. And she's developed her own style. And really, that's with running. When people say to me, well, how should I run? I said, my answer is, and it's always been, run as if you're 9 years old running across the playground trying to get away from somebody, in tag, and not thinking about it, but just relaxing. And that's what she does. That's what she's doing.
Back to our men's race, just past the 5K mark. They came through 3 miles in 14:15. So we're starting to get a little bit of a separation.
Yeah, someone's taken off.
We'll get an idea of who that is when we can get a better sense of his number.
This is a definite break.
So that's Teshome McKinnon. He trains in Colorado Springs. He's originally from Ethiopia, but he's a United States citizen, and he ran really, really well a couple of weeks ago at a 12K road race. And we knew coming in, like, oh, well, he was a bit of a late addition, actually, and replaced one of the Colorado runners for the Team USA. And when I was looking at his results, I'm like, oh, Teshome could be the man to beat on this course.
You always look for the recent performances. It's not their personal records. You want to know what they've done recently.
Absolutely. So definitely some separation there. Emily continuing to widen her lead. She's past the 5-mile mark. She'll make that turn back onto Folsom and see the stadium up in the distance. She'll be excited and thrilled when you all give her an ovation when she comes in.
She is very fit at this point of the year, at this time of the year.
"17-second lead back to Camelli. So it looks like Kerr Gott has now maybe been passed for second place. Well, there's your top 4.
Yeah, they caught
definitely broken away. I believe that's Panga from Tanzania in the blue singlet, who was second here a year ago, competing for Team Tanzania. Connor Mance, Alex Masai, and Teshome McKinnon.
Well, at this point in the race, they're warmed up, and they all know how they're feeling. You feel different every day, particularly when you race, and all you runners who train, you know that. You can start out on a training run or even in a race and you just go, oh, that feels good. And you know, so now you know the men who are feeling good today about how they're going to perform. And the word metronome comes to mind when I look at this. You know, if you watch, it seems as if it's absolutely the same motion every time she comes down. She is so smooth in her own way, and she's found out what works for her in her form.
Absolutely. So she's on Folsom. She's about a K to go, my best estimation there. We'll see the sign here shortly. That's Emily Durgin running for Adidas and Team USA today.
And on this course, you cross Boulder Creek and then you make that right-hand turn to go up the hill right at the 6 mile. And if you take a little peek behind and you don't see anything, it's one of the greatest feelings you can ever have, because it doesn't happen often.
Right, this morning we were a little surprised in the A wave of the Citizens race that two of the men were together right away with just a quarter mile to go as they made that right-hand turn, which rarely happens, as we're seeing in the professional race. On the women's side, they tend to have broken away by that point. But we'll see with men, with 4 men together, it could be interesting this last 2 miles for them. Well, don't be fooled. She's working hard. I know it doesn't look like it, but these athletes are working hard. She's running right on that edge of failure, essentially. So she's going to be ready to get into this stadium. And when she does take that quick peek back, I think she'll feel relieved that there's no one close by.
And the way she runs, I also get this feeling, all the coaches will tell you, your race isn't over till you cross the finish line. And she is running that same way. She is not easing off. And at this point, she's not even thinking about really whether she's going to win. She's thinking about getting to the finish line.
And every year's just a bit different. You just never know how it's going to shake out in terms of the tactics and just how it unfolds for each athlete and what they need to bring to the table. But today she was able to just run a steady pace, nothing really dramatic, and just ran her own race and pulled away.
Like I said, metronome. I just get that feeling. The way her head moves, it's almost like a metronome going back and forth.
And we'll get a better idea of the team scores as we move along, but it does sound like Carrie Verdon has now moved into second. She's on USA Team Colorado and University of Colorado graduate. Emily has made that right-hand turn. She sees that 6 mile marker, knows she has a quarter mile to go. So let's give her that ovation when she comes into the stadium, folks, for a job well done. That hill is longer every year, it seems like, the harder you're running, but there she goes. She's making the left-hand turn. Here we go. Emily Durgin from the United States. That looks to be Daisy Camelli with Carrie Verdon in second and third. Edna Kurgot in fourth. That's 2 from Team USA across, 1 from Team USA Colorado across, 1 from Team Kenya across. That looks to be Maggie Montoya from Team Colorado to me. And Neely Gracie from Team Colorado. Trains and lives here in Boulder, along with Maggie. And this is Laura Thweet from Team USA. Team Mexico. Team Colombia. Looks like numbers 2 and 3 from Kenya. And on the video board, the men's race, that's Alex Masai from Kenya. Tashome McKinnon from Team USA, and that looks like Penga from Tanzania to me. Yep, Joseph Penga in the blue singlet off to the right of the screen.
Trying to hang on. There's a thread. There's a thread still attached there, and he can't let that break. They'll get a certain point ahead, and you just can't keep up anymore, and you start to drop back.
The men are at 25:40. So they're on Folsom now. We'll see where they are in terms of mile split, but they are getting close. They've definitely broken away, so it's a 2-person race at this point. I wouldn't say Penga's completely out of it,
no.
But at this point in the race, that feels further than it would look on screen.
And now they're running side by side. They're actually resting a little and seeing, okay, who's going to go? Who's going to go?
Men are averaging 4:42 per mile. They just passed 9K, so they're going to run just over 29 minutes, which is good running here at this elevation. And on a day like today, a 70-degree day, that's solid running. Team Kenya looks to be winning the men's side currently with 2nd, 4th, and 5th. Alex is for Team Kenya, so that could be a 1 point for them too.
I think this is the first attempt at a breakdown. He's pressing just to see what the response is.
He is, so they're coming up on Boulder Creek.
Not hard, he's not pressing hard.
McKinnon's not gonna give in.
Nope. I think it's going to be 1 on the hill.
Looks like USA Colorado is 2nd on the men's side behind Kenya currently. This is unofficial on the men's side. And it is really hard to see what's going on behind them, but we've heard that Mance is coming hard. You can see him on the left of your screen, so that's Connor Mance, who's going to be pushing hard here, from best we can tell. And I feel like I saw Leonard Career back there as well, who was our last year's champion.
Good eyes.
About to make the right-hand turn. Alex Masai has just about 1.5 meter step lead on him.
He's pressing now. Yep, now he's going. He's going.
Alex Masai lives and trains in Flagstaff, runs for Hoka NAZ Elite. Connor Mance is not out of it. You see him back there in third.
He's gaining. He's gaining. Connor Mance is gaining.
There they go to make the right. Oh, they're going by the Champion Center, so not quite into the stadium, but it's going to be a race, folks.
Whoa! Connor Mance from way back.
Two-person race into the stadium. Alex Masai out of Kenya. Connor Mance from the United States. And Connor Mance is going to be your 2023 individual champion. Followed closely by Alex Masai. Tashome McKinnon in third. Joseph Penga from Tanzania in fourth. Wesley Kiptu from Kenya in fifth. Ed Chesarak from Kenya in sixth. That's Sam Chalinga for Team USA Colorado now, making the turn. And Leonard Career from Team USA Colorado, both competing for the Army WCAP program. I see Jared Ward and Clayton Young. So we'll obviously get you the official team scores as we have those come in, but let's help the rest of these athletes finish up this morning. Luke Caldwell from Team Great Britain. So we do have some unofficial times and scores on the men's side. It looks like Connor Mance ran 29:10. Team Kenya, so far unofficially as your team champion, followed by USA Colorado as your second team. Mr. Chris Thompson from Great Britain. And Mr. Liam D from Great Britain. Looks like we have some unofficial scores on the women's side. Team Kenya with 19 points, followed by Team USA with 16. Oh, sorry, Team USA with 16 points, followed by Team Kenya with 19 points. So Frank, gosh, we had a race. That was for sure on the men's side. It was definitely closer than we would have anticipated. And to see Connor come rolling from behind, we had kind of counted him out with about 1,000 to go.
And he was doing so much work at the start. And he must be incredibly fit, because when he started to move, his momentum was just carrying him along like that. And it just never gave up, and it's like he just carried it right up the hill. Right up the hill. It's like the hill wasn't there.
Right, and Alex Masai gave a valiant effort to try and break him and get. There's that distance where you want to just break their spirit a little bit, but it wasn't quite enough. And Connor came roaring up, which was great to see. That type of race here in this finishing Folsom Stadium.
And Emily Durgeon is just, she deserved it. She, again, fit, ready to run hard at the certain point in the race when it matters. This was fun.
Definitely a testament to Emily running her own race and setting the tone on the women's side to take that team title, which is always, on Memorial Day is always fun for us to celebrate. And on the men's side for Team Kenya, they did a great showing today.
Yeah, they did, and they came back because they were kind of embarrassed, as I remember, last year. They didn't run that well, at least from the Kenyan perspective. And, you know, they showed. And the other thing is, you know, all the athletes from the other countries who come here, they really like being here because we're very accepting in Boulder. And I think they like it. They like the atmosphere. And so they want to do well here. And it is a team competition, which we talked about at the start. The only time, I think, in the year, other than on the Olympic team for these people, this is their only, world, but it's not done in this fashion. And the way they can, you know, benefit not only themselves, but their teams as well.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Well, Frank Shorter, it's been fun. Great calling the race with you again this year. We're excited. Thank you all for sticking around and supporting these athletes. We would hope that you stay with us. Just here in about 3 minutes, the Memorial Day tribute and celebration will be beginning right at noon. So thank you all for being here, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year as well.